14 days after I handed my umbrella to a woman I was certain I would never see again, she was standing on the front steps of the school where I teach, holding it out to me, soaked to the skin, for the second time in her life, on my account. There was something written on the little white tag sewn inside the canopy. A phone number, in blue pen, and one word above the number, a name I hadn't known 2 weeks earlier and would not stop saying for the rest of my life. "You," she said, wringing rain out of her sleeve, "are a genuinely difficult man to return an umbrella to. I have spent my whole career teaching teenagers how the biggest events in history almost always began with one small, ordinary choice made on one small, ordinary afternoon. I should have recognized one when it was dripping on my steps. I didn't. Not yet. My name is Jonah Webb. I'm 34. I teach high school history, which means I spend my days explaining to skeptical 16-year-olds that empires have fallen because somebody missed a meeting, and wars have started over a letter that arrived a day too late. I'm good at the job. I have a quiet apartment, a walk to work I could do blindfolded, and a standing Tuesday night habit of grading papers in the same diner booth until the waitress starts flipping chairs onto tables around me. I wasn't lonely. I had simply built a life with very few moving parts, and I had quietly decided that a thing with few moving parts was the same as a thing that could not break. I carry an umbrella every day, from September to May. Not because I'm especially careful, because I like being the person who has the umbrella when nobody else does. It is a small, cheap, repeatable way to feel useful to strangers I'll never have to know. I'd had that particular one for 6 years, navy. One rib bent crooked from a bus door, a wooden handle worn pale in the exact shape of my grip. If I'm honest, it was the longest committed relationship of my adult life, and it asked nothing of me, which was precisely why it lasted. The afternoon I gave it away, the sky came down like it had a personal grievance against the city. It was the 3rd week of October, that cold, needling rain that doesn't fall so much as ambush you sideways. School had let out an hour before. I was crossing the plaza by the train station, the open one. No awnings, no mercy. And I saw her before I understood I was seeing her. A woman in a thin yellow raincoat that had clearly given up its entire job, dark hair plastered flat to her skull, standing dead still in the middle of the downpour, with her whole body curved protectively around a white cardboard box, the kind tied with red and white baker's string. She wasn't running for cover. She was just standing there getting destroyed by the weather, holding that box the way you'd hold something alive. I did the thing I do. I walked over and held my umbrella out over the box and said, "Here, you take it. I'm 2 stops from home." She looked at me like I'd offered her a kidney she hadn't asked for. "Absolutely not," she said. "It's your umbrella." There was flour on her wrist, I noticed, a pale dusting still clinging to the inside of her forearm despite the rain, which told me she'd come straight from somewhere warm and floured into the worst of this. "You'll get soaked." "I'm already soaked," I said. "You're protecting a cake." "It's a birthday cake for a kid who's about to be 7 and will not understand why it's a soup." She clutched the box tighter. "I'm not taking a stranger's umbrella." "Then we're at an impasse," I said, "because I'm not taking it back, and I have nowhere to be, and I will absolutely stand here in the rain longer than you will." We argued about it. In a downpour. At rising volume. 2 adults having a genuine standoff over who got to be rained on, while a child's birthday cake slowly aged between us. In the end, I more or less forced the handle into her free hand, said happy birthday to the kid, and walked off into the rain before she could give it back. Water already running down the back of my collar. Feeling, and I want to be precise about this, completely ridiculous, and absurdly, inexplicably alive. I did not look back. I have wondered since what would have happened if I had. Probably nothing. Probably everything. I told myself that night, dripping in my own kitchen, that it was just an umbrella. I have always been very good at telling myself things. It's a skill, like any other, and like any other it gets sharper the more you avoid using it on the truth. The trouble was the next 2 weeks, because here is what I learned about myself between that Tuesday and the one that followed it. I am a man who can build an entire interior life out of 90 seconds. I caught myself thinking about her at unforgivable times, mid-sentence in a lecture on the Treaty of Versailles, reaching for chalk, standing in the cereal aisle holding a box I had no memory of selecting. The flower on her wrist. The way she'd argued with me instead of thanking me, like gratitude was a softness she didn't hand out to the weather. The exact pitch of It's Your Umbrella, which I replayed enough times to wear a groove in it. I didn't even know her name. You do not get to miss a person you spoke to for the length of a song. I lectured myself on this point repeatedly, with footnotes, in my professional capacity as a man who teaches other people not to romanticize the past. I started taking the long way home through the plaza. I told myself it was the rain roots, the drainage, some practical thing a history teacher knows better than most that I just happened to be passing, is the most popular lie in the human record, and I told it to myself daily, with a straight face, all the way across an open plaza I had no reason to cross. And then I bought a second umbrella, a cheap black one, nothing special, and started carrying it in my bag in the exact spot where my real one used to live. In case, I told myself. In case of what? I refused to finish the sentence. You can learn a great deal about a man's heart from the questions he won't let himself complete. I have always been very good at telling myself things. I had simply, for the first time in years, run headfirst into a thing I could not talk my way out of, and it was shaped like a woman in a yellow raincoat I would never see again. I'd stopped expecting her by the time she showed up. 14 days, almost to the hour. I came out the front doors of the school into another gray drizzle, and there she was at the bottom of the steps in the same yellow raincoat, doing the same poor job, holding my navy umbrella out in front of her like evidence at a trial. For a second, neither of us said anything. The rain ticked against the steps. The whole street smelled like wet concrete and somewhere, impossibly, like sugar. I asked the cake kid's mom which school had a teacher who'd give away his umbrella to a maniac in the rain. She said. Took me 3 tries. This city has a lot of schools and apparently a lot of maniacs. She pushed the umbrella another inch toward me. I wrote my number on the tag inside. I crossed it out. Then I wrote it again. Her jaw tightened. I'd appreciate it if you didn't make me explain the part in the middle. I took the umbrella. I turned back the little white care label tag, and there it was, in blue pen, a phone number, with one word above it. Lena, and underneath, smaller, slightly smudged where she'd clearly thought better of it, and then not. The cake survived. Something in my chest snapped quietly into place, like an umbrella opening. Jonah, I said, which was all I could manage, and then, because she was already half braced to flee, do you want to get out of the rain? I know a diner. The waitress flips the chairs at 9, but she likes me. She came. We sat in my booth and she ordered tea and held the mug in both hands and watched me over the rim like she was still deciding whether I was a person or a situation. She baked. Had her own small place 6 blocks off the plaza, open at 5 every morning, which explained the flower and the box and the standing in a hurricane devotion to a stranger's 7-year-old. She told me the cake had made it, technically, though one corner had gone to war with the rain, and she'd had to rebuild it in a stranger's hallway with a butter knife in sheer spite. She was funny in a flat, fast, undefended way that kept catching me off guard. The kind of humor a person uses like a hand held out to keep you at exactly arm's length. And every single time I laughed, she looked faintly surprised, like she'd forgotten the noise still lived in her, like she'd misplaced the receipt for it years ago. And here it was. We started seeing each other in the careful, deniable way two guarded people do. A coffee that was technically her returning a pen I'd lent her on purpose, so there'd be a reason. A walk that was officially about her finding a new flower supplier, and unofficially 3 hours long. She brought me a white box once and pretended it was a leftover, and inside was a small, perfect cake with nothing written on it. And I understood somehow that the nothing written on it was the entire message. That for a woman who put names and dates and happy birthday on everything she made, handing me a blank one was as close to a love letter as she could risk. I kept noticing the things she didn't say. When I asked an easy question, she answered it twice as fast as it deserved. And when I asked a real one, she set her mug down a little too hard and found something fascinating out the window. She told me about the bakery, the 5 a.m. starts, the regular who tipped in stamps. She did not tell me about whoever had taught her that kindness came with an invoice attached, though it was written all over the way she flinched, just slightly, every time I paid for something, or held a door, or remembered a thing she'd mentioned once. She'd been hurt by someone with a kind face. I'd have bet my pension on it. She let me close to exactly a certain point, and then, without ever raising her voice, she would close a door so smoothly you almost didn't hear the latch catch. And I learned the sound of that latch the way you learn a piece of music. And I learned never to lean on the door once it was shut. I didn't push. I decided that early, the way you decide the load-bearing things in a house, whatever this was. She had to be the one to walk all the way into it. I would stand in the rain as long as it took. I had, after all, already demonstrated to her precise standards that I was willing. The night it broke open, it was raining again. Of course it was. And we were walking back from nowhere in particular, under the navy umbrella, the bent rib letting a thin, cold line of water down onto her shoulder, both of us pretending not to notice, because moving closer to fix it would have meant admitting how close we already were. We didn't talk for a block. The rain was loud and steady on the canopy over us, a small dry world 6 feet wide moving through a wet one. Her arm was against mine. Her hair smelled like sugar and rain. I was holding the handle-worn pail in the shape of my own grip, and she had her hand around it too, just below mine, not quite touching. Both of us steering an umbrella that did not need 2 people to steer it. Neither of us moved our hands. Neither of us spoke. There is a kind of silence that is louder than anything either person could say, and we walked 4 blocks inside it. I became aware of small things the way you do when the big thing is too large to look at directly. The cold line of water finding her shoulder through the bent rib. The way she'd slowed her usual fast walk to match mine without either of us deciding to. A streetlight catching the side of her face as we passed under it, and the fact that she was already, faintly, not quite smiling, at nothing, at the rain, at the ridiculous arithmetic of a man and a woman and one broken umbrella. I have stood in front of rooms full of teenagers and narrated the turning points of entire centuries. I could not, walking those 4 blocks, have narrated the 1.5 inches between our 2 hands. It was the only stretch of distance I'd ever been afraid to measure out loud. Then, at her door, under the dripping edge, she stopped and looked at the wet pavement instead of at me, and she broke it first. I think we both already knew she would. "I walked past your school 3 times before I had the nerve to give it back," she said. quietly. The wit was gone out of her voice entirely. 3 days. Not 3 minutes. I'd get to the steps and I'd turn around. Because giving it back meant either I'd never see you again or I'd have to find out if I wanted to, and both of those felt like more than I'd signed up for over a cake. Her fingers tightened once around the handle, just below mine. I'm not good at this. The last person who was kind to me wanted something for it, and I've been reading every kind thing as a bill ever since. And then a maniac gave me his umbrella in a hurricane, and just walked away. Didn't even get my name. And I couldn't figure out the catch, and it's been driving me out of my mind for 2 weeks, because I think the catch is that there isn't one. That landed. That did something quiet and permanent to the whole rained-on street. I went still. My throat closed, and I made myself wait, because the body knows before the mouth does, and I wanted to mean whatever I said next. Then I gave her the door, all the way open, the way I'd promised myself I would. Lena, you don't owe me anything for an umbrella. You can hand it back right now and we can be a nice story you tell. The maniac in the rain, one time. I'll never knock on your door. I won't be a bill. I held her eyes. You get to decide this. Not me. I'm very good at standing in the rain. She didn't hand it back. She wrapped her whole hand around mine on the worn pail handle, finally, and held on. I don't want you to be a story, she said. So I told her the truth, and I made it specific, because she deserved better than a soft, general thing. I bought a second umbrella the week after I met you, I said. A backup. I've been carrying it for 2 weeks and refusing to tell myself who it was for. It was for you. It was always going to be for you. On the day you came back, which I had no reason to believe you would, and I carried it anyway. I teach people how small accidents change everything for a living, Lena. And I still almost missed the one that walked into my own plaza. My voice went rough. When something good happens now, you're the first person I want to hand the umbrella to. That's the whole catch. I'm sorry it's not more sinister. Her eyes went bright and unguarded, and she laughed once and it came out wrong, wet and broken in the middle. And she leaned in under the dripping edge and I leaned down, and the first time I kissed her it was gentle, and it was chosen. Both of us getting rained on through the one bent rib, neither of us reaching to fix it. And then a clump of teenagers rounded the corner under a shared garbage bag, and one of them stopped dead and shrieked, at a volume usually reserved for fire alarms. MR? Web? Lena pulled back about an inch and pressed her forehead to my jaw, shaking. Are those yours? Third period, I said into her hair. I'm going to hear about this until June. Tell them it was a small, ordinary choice on an ordinary afternoon, she said. Tell them that's how the big things start. Isn't that your whole thing? I have, in fact, told them exactly that. Every year since. 3 months later, there was a white string-tied box in my fridge more often than not, and a navy umbrella with a bent rib living in the stand by my door, beside a cheap black backup I never threw away because she wouldn't let me. That's the one that means something, she said, which was a sentence I'd have paid money to hear out of her 2 months earlier, and now got for free on a Tuesday. She started leaving things at my place without announcing it. A spare apron, a tin of the good tea, a list of supplier numbers stuck to my fridge in her fast, slanted hand. She still answered easy questions too fast and set her mug down too hard at the hard ones, but the doors she used to close so smoothly began staying open a beat longer each time. Until one ordinary morning I realized she'd stopped closing them at all, and I couldn't have told you the date it happened, which, for a man who teaches dates for a living, felt like the most important thing I'd ever failed to write down. A year after that, she taught me to fold the umbrella properly so the bent rib wouldn't get worse, standing behind me with her floured hands over mine, narrating my incompetence with great affection, and I let it take 4 times as long as it needed to. Years later, when people ask how the two of us met, and they always ask, because he gave a stranger his umbrella and she tracked him down is the kind of story people want to be true. She tells it as the day a maniac refused to take his umbrella back. And I tell it as the day a woman stood in a hurricane to keep a stranger's kid's birthday dry, and we argue, in front of company, about which of us was the reckless one. She says she only came back to return property. I say nobody crosses out a phone number and writes it again for a piece of property. Nothing about us ever really changed. She's still the fast, flat, funny one. I still carry an umbrella every day from September to May. The only difference is that now there's always a second one in the bag. Not for a stranger, not in case, just for her. And I've stopped pretending I don't know exactly who it's for. It wasn't anything grand, what started it. It was the smallest ordinary kindness on the wettest ordinary afternoon. It had simply, like all the big things I teach, refused to stay small. So, what would you have done if you'd seen a stranger getting soaked in the rain protecting something precious? Would you have given away your umbrella and walked off without their name? And have you ever let one small, ordinary kindness quietly change the entire direction of your life? Tell me your story down in the comments. If this one found you tonight, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.